believe that we are live. All right. So, hey there, students. Thank y'all for joining us here at Marco Learning's AP Euro review session. May the 4th be with you, ladies and gentlemen. How about those lightsabers and all of that kind of stuff there? I tell you, it's a great night to be reviewing for AP Euro. We've got, all right, so thank you for the kind words. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and see what y'all are, all right, arguing about some things. Let's hear some things about the exam. Okay. So what are your questions? We are getting lit after the Yesy tomorrow. I guess that means after the test. Okay, Italian unification. Okay, so Abraham, let's go ahead and make a little note here. Now, remember, if you have not subscribed to Marco Learning, make sure that you subscribe so that you can participate in the chat. Also, remember, Marco Learning provides support for, I forget how many AP subjects. I mean, it just keeps growing and growing and growing. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to note here that if you go to marcolearning.com/AP Euro, that's something we can go ahead and throw up as a pinned chat or something like that, that there are 11 study guides here. And somebody just asked, like, these are on specific topics. So we have here, you know, a number of topics here that are going to be relevant to your AP Euro exam. And one of those is the national unifications. Okay, so someone asked about Italian unification. So what we want to understand is we want to understand both Italian unification and German unification in their proper context. Okay, so for example, now we want to start this, you know, we want to start this this thing on with historical context with the Crimean War. Okay, so it's the Crimean War basically ends the era of Metternich's concert of Europe. You've got on one side, you've got Britain and France versus Russia. You know, and of course, that Britain and France are fighting with the Ottoman Empire. They're basically saying, look, Russia cannot expand into Crimea. It's going to throw off the balance of power. Now, does that sound familiar? You know, we got Russia expanding into that region today or trying to expand, and NATO is saying, no, can't do it, not going to allow it, kind of thing. So with that, the concert of Europe is over because Metternich's concert of Europe was about the great powers not fighting each other, but cooperating. So we want to understand the Crimean War makes great historical context for anything about national unifications. Now, specifically as well, if we look at the Crimean War, okay, not the Rhymeian War, but the Crimean War, we're going to see there that if we look at the two sides, what we're going to see is there is Sardinia. Now, Sardinia is the nucleus of what's going to become the United Italy. Okay, so what you're going to see there is Count Cavour, who is a, you know, major player in the Italian unification movement. He makes some strategic alliances because Italy is not as big as Germany, not quite as economically developed. So for German unification, Bismarck says blood and iron. Okay, and so the unification of Germany, Otto von Bismarck, the position of Prussia in Germany will not be determined by its liberalism, but by its power. Not through speeches and majority decisions will great questions of the day be decided, but by iron and blood. And of course, when we quote him, we say blood and iron because it sounds cool. In German, Blut and Eisen or something like that. So I'm not the world's greatest expert in German. Now, also, I've got a rap about Otto von Bismarck. If y'all want to hear me rap, I mean, I don't want to force that on y'all. So y'all just kind of let me know in the chat. Maybe if we want the rapping, right now, Marco Learning is at 35.5K subscribers. So, you know, let's say that is 35.6K. As soon as we see 35.6K, I'll bust into that German unification rap. Okay, let's see if we've got enough people here to bring it to 35.6K. Okay, that'll be y'all's, you know, y'all let me know that, hey, we want to hear that rap. We're going to subscribe to Marco Learning's YouTube channel. So with that, the unifications of Italy and Germany. So Bismarck says, you know, look, we're going to use blood and iron. Remember that the revolutions of 1848 represented the first attempts the first attempts to unify Germany and Italy, and they failed. In Germany, you had the Frankfurt Parliament, and they were going to write a constitution. That didn't work out so well. So basically, the Germans, you had the 7 Weeks War versus Austria, and then the Franco-Prussian War versus France. After that, German unification. We also want to know a bit about Bismarck's realpolitik, that basically realpolitik is, let's be real. Let's not focus on ideologies. Let's not say I'm a liberal and I always do liberal things, or I'm a conservative and I always do conservative things, or I'm a nationalist and I always do nationalist things. And so Bismarck, you know, a conservative at heart, but he says, look, Germany needs to industrialize. Who's going to be the best partners for that? The liberals. Okay, so the liberals are going to be the best partners for that. So then, you know, who is going to, you know, what do we do to get the socialists to quit agitating? Well, Bismarck says we've got to create the first welfare state. You know, when we think about the old age pensions, accident insurance, government-sponsored health insurance. So Bismarck, you know, devises the first welfare state in Europe. Basically, the first time that a European state takes some responsibility for the care of its people, for the direct care of its people. Whereas, you know, before that, that would be seen as like the family or the church or something like that. So the first welfare state. But again, he's not doing it because he believes in a welfare state. He believes that this is the way to limit the political influence of the socialists. So again, Bismarck was anti-socialist, but he was saying, look, realpolitik says I might need to concede to them in order to keep them from gaining more power. So Italy, now you don't have to know the ins and outs of every little part of Italian-German unification, but as far as that goes, you know, I tend to focus on German unification, but it's good to know what's going on, that Italy is also a country that is, you know, you've got a nation. A nation, when we think about nationalism, that is a group of people who share a language. They share cultural elements such as maybe religion, festivals, a shared sense of history, you know, a shared literature going back all the way to the printing press. So the Count of Cavour and Giuseppe Garibaldi, these are two people that you might want to know as far as Italian unification. And again, you've got the nation, these people who speak Italian, these people who have this shared history of being descendants of the great Roman Empire, and then, but they are divided by state boundaries. You know, the state is the political institution. So a nationalist is someone who wants to create like a nation that is both a nation and a state. Okay. And so as far as that goes, we see that. Now, Bismarck's alliance system. Okay. So we want to note the alliance system. Now, the alliance system is something of a causal factor of World War I, but at the same time, the alliance system, it works until it doesn't. I mean, think about today with NATO, that so far, NATO has given Europe peace because most European countries are members of NATO. So, you know, that's if an attack on one of us is considered an attack on us all. And so, you know, the alliance system, you know, we haven't given up on that in the abstract, but Bismarck's alliance system, once Bismarck left the scene, becomes something that's going to lead to World War I. And it starts with Germany and Austria-Hungary creating the dual alliance that says, hey, if either one of us is attacked by Russia, we will help the other. Okay. So Bismarck's alliance system, okay, that basically Bismarck is, you know, doing okay, but then in 1890, Bismarck's out. The Kaiser dismisses him. And so, you know, ethnic nationalism. Now, one thing we want to note here, when we think about ethnic nationalism, this is wanting a nation where people speak the language you do. They share your history, they share your cultures and festivals. And so while in Germany and Italy, that brought people together, like basically because you had people who shared a nationality, but they were across the lines of states. But in the Austrian Empire, you've got 10 different distinct ethnic nationalities and one empire. So this is something that is going to lead to, when we think about World War I and nationalism, that the Balkans, all these nationalist movements in the southeastern Balkan Peninsula, that is where that powder keg that starts World War I is going to blow up. Okay, and let's see how Marco Learning is doing on those subscriptions. Do we have enough? Do we have any more subscriptions? All right, you know what, we'll see. I mean, I may have to wrap anyway, but let's see if we can get that to 35.6. Okay, that would really really make me happy. All right, so going from that, let's see what we've got going on here. Let's see. So cracked open the first Red Bull of the night. Now, Layla, I would be very, very cautious here. I would be very cautious. So just make sure, as far as that goes, you know, get some rest tonight. I would not try to pull an all-nighter. By the time that you actually start taking the exam at 8 in the morning, no amount of Red Bulls is going to get you where you need to be. So definitely consider getting some rest tonight. Okay, and so with that, all right, David, yes, okay, you definitely want to get, so interwar, okay, so when we think about the interwar, there is another one there, okay, so there is another thing. If we're looking at the interwar, again, marcolearning.com/, you know, apeuro. So let's go ahead and share our screen here. And going back to here, we'll go back to this where we've got 11 study guides, remember, and the Russian Revolution just got added. So national unification, or wait, we just went there, right? Okay, so the Treaty of Versailles, and that has a section that is focusing on the struggles of Weimar Germany, like what's going on in interwar Germany. Now, remember that Woodrow Wilson proposed the 14 points as the basis of the armistice. Woodrow Wilson, the American president, and of course, you know, this is the first time an American president played a decisive role in a European, you know, in ending a European war, but Wilson wanted a peace without victory. Okay, his 14 points, you know, with things such as freedom of the seas, reduction of arms, you know, open treaty negotiations, you know, free trade, and a League of Nations. Okay, so U.S. President Woodrow Wilson became one of the leaders at the Paris Peace Conference, where they, you know, wrote the Treaty of Versailles. But Britain and France, they wanted reparations. And so they wanted reparations from Germany. They wanted to blame Germany for starting the war, to make Germany legally responsible and liable. So the 14 points, again, the peace without victory, free trade, freedom of the seas, self-determination of peoples, reduction of arms, creation of a League of Nations. Now, Article 231 of the Treaty of Versailles, it was to, you know, basically they want to blame Germany and punish Germany for starting the war. And Germany had to agree to this. Article 231, or you can just remember it as the war guilt clause. Okay, either one of those will work on your exam. And it held Germany responsible for that conflict. Now, again, the League of Nations, this is the first attempt to create a permanent, you know, official body where European countries can get together there. So there is a German using a 1 million mark currency note, or, you know, several of them as note paper. Okay, so basically 1 million marks, they're so worthless, I might as well use this as a notepad. Okay, and so you've got, you know, that there's hyperinflation. Then the Germans and the, you know, not the Germans, the French and the Belgians, they say, hey, we know what you're trying to do. And so they basically go into the Ruhr and they say, we're not going to take this inflated German money. We're going to go into the Ruhr region and we're going to run the factories and we're going to keep the profits. And so that was a crisis. But then the United States came in and the United States said, hey, let's fix this. The United States renegotiates the loans and the reparations, and that's the Dawes plan, okay, that kind of keeps things going. And so then, of course, the League of Nations was an international organization created by the Treaty of Versailles, and you know, the United States never joined. Germany was not allowed to join for some years. Then the Treaty of Versailles, one thing we want to note as well, that decolonization has two phases. Decolonization phase one, that is the decolonization phase one, that is basically World War I. We're going to take the Ottoman Empire's imperial part. They, you know, the Turks can keep Turkey, but other than that, in the Middle East, we're going to have League of Nations mandates. And we're going to take Germany's colonies in Africa, and they're going to be governed by Britain and France as League of Nations mandates. Now, they're not going to be given to Britain or France. Basically, the mandate system system is that the idea is we're getting them ready for a transition to independence. Okay, that's what's going on over there, is to transition them toward independence. Now, decolonization part 2 is after World War II. Now, it's interesting because, you know, we've got the coronation of King Charles III that's going to be happening very early in the morning. I think it's going to be happening at like 5 a.m. on, you know, on Saturday morning. And so as far as that goes, that I noticed that the Vice President of India, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, you're going to see, you know, it's very interesting that after, you know, when we think about decolonization phase 2 after World War II, that, you know, Britain loses, you know, basically India and Pakistan get their independence in 1947. Bangladesh later splits from Pakistan. But what's going to happen is Britain has continued to have a good relationship with these countries, you know, that basically like India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, they are all going to be represented at the coronation of King Charles III, which is a very interesting thing there. So as far as that goes, you know, we did actually get there. So let's go ahead and open up this Bismarck rap. Now, I don't want to force a rap on y'all just because Marco got to the you know, 35.6K subscribers. I don't want to force it on y'all. So y'all can tell me if y'all want to hear this or not. Like, Richie, we don't want to hear you rap. You're not a rapper, which you're right, I'm not a rapper. So y'all just let me know where's the that's right, Zuru, you got it. I am true to my word here, right? So you know, so you can find this on my SoundCloud, you know, or you can find it. I've got the music video on my YouTube channel. Okay. So as far as that goes, yes, true to my word, we will go ahead and do that. You know, Machiavelli, remember, if we go back to Machiavelli, he said it was okay to break your word if it benefits you. Now, the thing is, it probably wouldn't benefit me or Marco Learning or anybody really for me to lie to y'all about rapping. So I'm going to go ahead and get that going. It sounds like y'all do want to hear the rap. Okay. Shout out to Mr. Snyder. All right. And if many of Miss Snyder's students are here, that as well. Okay. Shout out to Mr. Lloyd. Okay. That Marco wants the rap, and you know, Marco is you know, this is their channel. So let's go ahead and get this rap started, ladies and gentlemen. This is on Autobahn Bismarck. Remember, you can find this on my SoundCloud, or you can find the video on my YouTube channel. More Water Records, Autobahn Bismarck. Got some German states that need to be unified. I'm the Iron Chancellor, and I feel an obligation. Unify the German states under Prussian domination, a conservative at heart. But I've got a little trick. It's the politics of power. Call it real politics. An alliance with the liberals because I'm industry emphatic and they're secular. They like my culture cop against the Catholics. And the Social Democrats, because I'm gonna put it bluntly, that Germany will never be a socialist country. I've got old age pensions and some accident insurance. If you're hurt at work, I've got your back. You have my reassurance. Call it state socialism. Now the liberals want to hate. But without the working classes, we can't unify the state. The position of Prussia in Germany at this hour will not be determined by its liberalism, but its power. Great questions aren't decided by speeches or majorities. It's blood and iron. I'll use war to spread authority with the Austrians as allies. We took Schleswig and Holstein, declared war on Austria. The next step in my grand design. Prussia won in 7 weeks. Austria wasn't any match. Then it's time to provoke France with the M's dispatch. Moki led a modern army armed with telegraphs and trains. France decisively defeated, gave up Alsace and Lorraine. After unifying Germany, then I really had some clout. Now it's 1890 and I'm out. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, y'all wanted to hear the rap. We got the rap heard. Do we have any kind of last minute-ish kind of questions? And we did get, I tell you what, we got Marco Learning like 300 more subscribers. Not bad, not bad. New Mr. Nikki. All right, shout out to Miss Young, Ottoman the man. Okay, so Slay. All right. So Mika saying a sleigh. Okay, sleigh P euro, right? Okay, and remember, yeah, oh wow, y'all got some documents in there, huh? So the liberals, remember that goes into Bismarck's realpolitik, kind of going through different, different people there. And so shout out to Miss Duncan. All right, excellent, excellent. So with that, the causes and effects leading up to World War I. So we've got here, shout out to Miss Shosel, okay? The Chartist, actually, I've got a video on both the causes of World War I and the Chartist on my YouTube channel. So think about that. Mrs. Lee and, Mr. Campione, very good here. And Unit 4 to 6, please, Slay. All right. So Chartism, excuse me. Now, Chartism, that is basically an attempt. That is the People's Charter. Like, this is in my, you just put in Tom Ritchie Chartist. These are the people who wanted the People's Charter in England. And this would have created basically a direct democracy where it would have given universal white male suffrage. Oh my goodness, Kinder's kids are here. Kinder's kids. Oh my goodness, from California. Mr. Burrell, Miss McCann. Oh my goodness, Kinder's kids. Wow. Okay. And Senora McGuire, she made me the man I am. Okay. So with that, Chartist, the People's Charter had 6 points: universal male suffrage, that basically no property qualifications for Parliament, pay for members of Parliament. They wanted annual elections so the people can tune in a lot. Basically the people can weigh in instead of every 5 years. They want to vote every year, basically, so Parliament's more democratic. Now, the People's Charter was a petition. And so what happened when the petition was delivered, the Parliament took it, but they were like, they didn't pay a lot of attention to it. But we do want to note too that although the Parliament was not very friendly to the People's Charter, they still did make reforms in the 1840s. Okay, so we want to note things like the Mines Act, the 10-Hour Act, repealing the Corn Laws. So again, I've got that that lecture on the Chartist. Okay, so we want to make sure that y'all take a look at that. All right. So, and also, Sean, while we're there, now usually Unit 1 also has a high probability for the LEQ. And one thing to think about as well, last year, they kind of threw a curveball, okay? They kind of threw a curveball at us, and they did not, they did not put Unit 1 on the LEQ, even though the CED says that the first LEQ will always come from like Units 1 and 2, that first, historical period. Shout out to Mr. Bismarck's class. All right, as far as that goes. So going from there, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Miss Crabtree. All right, good to see y'all again. Miss Perkinson, yeah, Miss Perkinson is back. Like, isn't that awesome that Miss Perkinson has come back out of retirement? That is so awesome. Shout out Easy Money Sniper. All right, great. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be joined, very briefly in a few seconds by John, the CEO of Marco Learning. Y'all might even get a view of Marco the dog before this thing's over. You always see Marco on the marketing things and all of that. You see a picture of him, but Marco, the actual dog. Coach Bernhardt. All right, excellent. Philosophies of the Enlightenment. Now, one thing that I would recommend is my video. You've got, what is enlightenment? I've got a video on Immanuel Kant. What is enlightenment? Shout out to Mr. O'Brien. And remember that, Mr. Washington and Miss Norvath. Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that John's here. And again, you're about to be hearing from John Muscatello, the CEO of Marco Learning. So who's going to, give you a little bit of review. Remember, apeuro.com/Marco Learning. All right, John, I'm going to turn it over to you, and it has been a pleasure.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom. It's great to have the AP Euro GOAT with us live. If you like the session with Tom, go ahead and press that like button. I do see some people wanting to see Marco, the dog, and that's going to be your reward after I'm done with my whirlwind tour. It's like an annual tradition at Marco Learning, my whirlwind tour of our study guide pack. So we're going to put the link to this in our study guide pack. marcolearning.com/AP-Euro is one way to get it, just on our free study guides page. I'm going to do the whole AP Euro course in like 25 minutes. So let's take a minute and just go ahead and settle in. Let me know if you've got any specific questions. It's great to see you all as you're coming in. Great, and it is so exciting that, let's see, I'm just seeing some familiar names. Great. This study guide pack, if you have not yet kind of found it, again, it's on our website. Let's get right into it. We got an exam tomorrow, people. We don't have time for any nonsense. Unit 1, the Renaissance and the Age of Exploration. So a few key things that you need to know about this are, one thing I want to focus in on here is the word humanism, right, which was all about an era of education in the 1400s in Italy that was focused on classical history, on man is the measure of all things, as the sky is the limit. It's a world less oriented maybe around traditional kind of Christianity and Catholicism and more around a civic view of life. So that's why we have categories like civic humanism. A couple of other things you want to remember is that in the Italian Renaissance, all the art and literature that we know and love from this time period is coming specifically from the funding of people like the Medici, that basically very wealthy families, noble families, merchant families are funding and fueling the arts during this period. Renaissance art is a lot prettier than medieval art in terms of its single point perspective, its realism, its emphasis on classical themes. So this is something that you know from your experience in the course. Of all the histories, AP US, AP Euro, and AP World, AP Euro is particularly focused on art movements. And so Renaissance art is important: balance, symmetry, single point perspective, and classical themes. Now, the Italian Renaissance is different from the Northern Renaissance. The Northern Renaissance happened in the North. It also had more of an emphasis on Christian and Catholic thinking, as opposed to maybe the secular themes that we might see in Italy. The art also like a little dowdier and a little less fun. So this is Erasmus, and Erasmus's idea of Christian humanism is embodied in the Praise of Folly. Erasmus is literally someone you have to know in the course and exam description, someone who will appear on the test. So when you're thinking about Unit 1 in the Renaissance, you want to make sure you understand the Italian Renaissance as a movement of art fueled by merchant money, fueled by beautiful symmetry and single point perspective, but it's different from the Northern art because it's less explicitly religious. It's also less drab looking and less connected to those elite merchant families. Another theme of Unit 1 in the Age of Exploration is all about the new monarchies. What makes something a new monarch? Or new monarchy? It's less about little tiny lame medieval kings who had no power and more about a centralized king or queen who has a lot of power and who is discovering the new world. So the poster children of this, so to speak, are Henry VIII and Ferdinand and Isabella in Spain. They start building empires, they start centralizing power, and this becomes a key theme of what they've achieved. The final piece is the discovery of the new world. So basically, if you're thinking about what's going on in Unit 1, the Middle Ages are ending. They're ending because medieval art is ending. They're ending because the Italian Renaissance is replacing the values and culture of the Middle Ages. And they're ending because kings and queens are becoming much more powerful. This final moment here is the Middle Ages are ending because they discover the new world. And this sets up the Columbian Exchange, a category you need to know. The Columbian Exchange is the movement of goods across Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia. And this movement of goods and peoples literally transforms both continents, bringing diseases and new foods and new people groups and creating from little old medieval Europe the first empires of the world. So Unit 1 is about the end of the Middle Ages as defined by the Italian Renaissance, the Northern Renaissance, the new monarchies, and the Age of Exploration. I want to take a minute in my flyby of all this and ask, do you have any questions related to Unit 1, the Renaissance, the Northern Renaissance, the Italian Renaissance, and all of this? And I see lots of emojis and ones in the chats. And let's see, Tan, you've asked the question, I've studied Christian humanism, but still don't understand if humanism focuses on secular values and education, and how can Christian humanism exist without contradicting itself? Great question. There isn't a fundamental contradiction between Christianity and humanism. You can be a Christian humanist. It's just about emphasis, right? So if we go back to the Middle Ages, when they're not humanist, the emphasis is on scripture is received authority. The miracles of the saints are the power of God in this world. The Catholic Church is the source of all truth. Fast forward to this Unit 1 period, 1400 to 1600. And we're seeing ideas of humanism, that human-centered thinking is starting to blend with Christianity. So it's important not to set up an opposition, Christianity over here, humanism over here. The two work hand in hand. It's just once you integrate humanism and Christianity, you start emphasizing other things, a little bit less emphasis on maybe scripture as received authority, on miracles and the lives of saints, and a little bit more on what humans can figure out through logic, reason, and the pagan classical world. So great questions. The question, there's the question of were there any really important reforms in Unit 1? The only one, we're going to get to the Reformation where all the reforms happen, but it's important to think of Erasmus as somebody who is within the Catholic Church, who says, we got problems in the Catholic Church, but we can fix those problems inside the Catholic Church, versus somebody like Martin Luther and eventually kind of later Martin Luther and John Calvin, who were like, we got problems with the Catholic Church, we need to leave the Catholic Church. So that's really the difference, is the Northern Renaissance says humanism can solve problems within the church can solve its own problems. The Reformation says the church can't, we need to form our new Protestant churches. So that's great. Reformation, best unit, let me hear some hype from my boy Luther. We'll do that when we get to Unit 2. And let's see, how often does Unit 1 appear on the exam? One thing for all of you, if you, let me know in the chat, have any of you taken AP US History, AP World History before? In AP US History, different units count for different percentages. In Euro, it's all exactly the same. So all 9 units count equally on the AP European History exam, whereas units 1, 2, and 9 on APUSH count for a lot less. So wonderful. Okay, so that's Unit 1 in a nutshell. And I promise you all a quick overview of the entire course. And that's what I'm doing. And there's our boy Luther. And Martin Luther really, again, unlike an Erasmus as part of the Northern Italian Renaissance, or not Italian Renaissance, part of the Northern Renaissance is saying, hey, we can use humanistic ideas, we can use biblical scholarship, we can use outside thinking to reform the church. Luther flips the whole Catholic Church on its head. And the key moment here, of course, is in 1517, when he pins his 95 Theses at the door of Wittenberg Cathedral. Martin Luther was Catholic, and he challenged the Catholic Church from within. One of the key categories of what he challenged was the sale of indulgences, which were basically like, hey, if you're stuck in purgatory, place between heaven and hell, and you want to get a ticket out, give me $50 and I'll buy you a ticket out, right? Like that feels like corruption to me and to Martin Luther. So the sale of indulgences, problems within the church begin to create this real tension. One of the ideas that Luther was really preoccupied with was something we call sola scriptura, which means in Latin, only scripture. So if I want to know what is true inside of Christianity, it's the Bible. The Bible is the source of truth. If you're Catholic, you think, well, the Bible is a source of truth, but so is the office of the papacy. So is the church itself. That's not true for Luther and Protestants. Protestants are all about what we call bibliocentrism, a commitment to the Bible as the revelation of God. So the Reformation challenges the authority of the Catholic Church. It's one of those things that marks the end of the Middle Ages. And by the way, it's great. We've got lots of people here with us. If you like this video, go ahead and press that like button. Definitely subscribe to our channel, and you can download this study guide that I'm doing in the chat. We've pinned it to the chat and to the description of this video. I'm going to skip over Baroque art. Baroque art has this beautiful drama. This, by the way, you can see in Rome. This is from, it's cut off, but this is the Ecstasy of Saint Teresa from Bernini. It is unbelievably beautiful art. It is so expressive and visual, and so much less austere than what we might see, for example, in something like this guy here, Erasmus of Rotterdam, or Protestant art. Like Martin Luther, he, according to the people in the chat, he's our homeboy, but this is not homeboy art. This Teresa is homegirl art. Look at her, all made out of marble, one giant block of marble, looking beautiful. One of the things about the Protestant Reformation is that it causes in the 1500s an explosion of war between Catholics and Protestants. That's where we get things like what you're looking at here, which is the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in France, which I think killed about 7,000 people, Catholics killing Protestants, just literally a bloodbath over religion, because what's at stake is the power of the Catholic Church. the power of monarchs, the nature of knowledge itself. How do we know something to be true? Well, Protestants and Catholics disagree on this. So the Protestant-Catholic divide is literally a matter of life and death in the 1500s. That's not really true today anywhere in the world, but the wars of religion really set that up. Let me know in the chat, trivia question, what is the treaty that marks the end of religious warfare of this kind in Europe, right? Because if there's a war in Europe right now between Russia and Ukraine, is that a war of religion? No, there's religious aspects to it, kind of, with Russian and Ukrainian Orthodox churches. World War I, World War II, were those religious wars? No. Jews were persecuted in World War II, but that wasn't the fundamental purpose of World War II. So I'm getting some things here inside of the chat. And one of the key themes here is the Peace of Westphalia, which in 1648 marks the end of religious warfare in a fundamental sense. There's still religious wars that happen, but this really hotbed of the wars of religion ends with all of this. Edict of Nantes ends the specific wars of religion we're talking about here, which allowed for religious pluralism. Pluralism means you can live in a society that allows for people of different faiths to coexist. The kind of society that we try to create in the United States, where different individuals, depending on their religion, can show up in a court of law and have equal rights. That wasn't true here. It was literally a bloodbath in Europe. One important theme, topic 2.5 and part of unit 2 is this. The Catholic Church went through its own Reformation. Sometimes they call it the Counter-Reformation, sometimes they call it the Catholic Reformation, but basically the idea is this. They knew they needed to fix stuff and they went to work. And where they went to work was at the Council of Trent. It lasted 20 years almost. It was a lot of talking and debating. And in the Council of Trent, the Catholic Church redefines itself as an institution, sticking to traditional beliefs, but also redefining itself inside the context of the 16th century. The Catholic Counter-Reformation is a powerful way that the Catholic Church survived the damage of the Protestant Reformation. And they rejected this idea that salvation is by faith and faith alone. The idea that to reconcile yourself with God, you have to believe in Jesus Christ, and that belief is what will save you. That's what Protestants say. Catholics say, no, it's faith and works together. And that's where we get the ideas of at the heart of the Council of Trent. We also get people like Ignatius of Loyola, who founds the Jesuits. The Jesuit movement is something that's really important in creating humanistic education. If you have ever heard of Georgetown University or Fordham University or Loyola, Maryland, those are all Jesuit universities that come out of the tradition of Ignatius of Loyola. So missionaries around the world who set up Catholic churches. The Loyola, any university that has Loyola in it is a Jesuit institution from that work. So the Catholic Church, it comes back with a vengeance in the late 16th century, and that's really powerful. And then finally, and this is a little bit less important in the course and exam description, but Reformation society changes values in Europe. There's a focus on frugality, on hard work, on the scriptures. And that really causes a lot of change. So you need to know about the Protestant Reformation, you need to know about the Catholic Reformation, and you need to know about the wars that ensued between them and how that changed society. Before I move on from Unit 2 to Unit 3 in my whirlwind tour of AP Euro, and I'm going to do it, I'm going to get through all of this stuff. I want to take a minute and just go to the chat. Do you have any questions here in the chat? And if you are just joining us in this video, go ahead and press that like button, subscribe to our channel, and participate in the chat. The study guides you're looking at are available on our website with the link that we pinned in the chat and the description. Any questions about the Protestant Reformation? Yes, we're talking about the Diet of Worms, in which Martin Luther was expelled from the Catholic Church. Remember, he started as a friar in the church, and eventually the tensions, his criticisms of the church caused his banishment. And yeah, Layla has put it one way. Wonderful. Okay, so Unit 2 is all about the Reformation. Again, we're looking at the end of the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages lasted for 1,000 years, between 500 and 1500. They end with the Reformation. They end with the Renaissance. They end with the discovery of the New World. And then we get into this period. And this is one of my favorite things in the world, right? Los tacones de Luis el XIV. This is he's actually French. Louis XIV, the first French king who really was into tights and high heels. It was originally a men's fashion. Louis XIV is the first real absolutist monarch. So as an absolutist monarch, it's not just I'm a king and I'm going to be super special. It's I'm a king. God has put me in this position. I have absolute power over everyone. And they moved the capital from Paris to Versailles. Versailles is one of the most expensive building projects in human history. If you ever get the chance to go, it is simultaneously beautiful and revolting. They spent half of the country's GDP, half of the country's economy building a palace. And then they moved all the nobility of France into this palace, and everyone was like, oh la la, and looked at his tacones. So we have this obsession with nobility, the sense of the divine right of kings, and this absolute power, which is quite different from what we're going to see from constitutionalism. Constitutionalism says, no, the king does not have absolute power. He is constrained by a constitution. So there's these very two different modes. When you think of Unit 3, you got to know two isms. Absolutism, the king has all the power. Constitutionalism, the king doesn't. The people do. It's all in this constitution. And just fun fact, today's Thursday, May 4th, everyone. On Thursday, May 6th, Saturday, May 6th, 2023, King Charles III of England is going to be crowned for the first time in 70 years. He will be crowned in a constitutional monarchy that very much limits his power. King Charles III is not an absolutist monarch. He's barely a constitutional monarch. He has almost no power. Now, he is Charles III, but Charles I is someone you want to remember because they up and beheaded him right in the late 1640s in a shocking and scandalous moment. The people of England reclaimed power for themselves by killing their king in a moment when he was extending himself too much. And you can see in this text here, a lively representation of the manner something his late majesty was beheaded upon to peas the scaffold January 30th, 1648. And they took this royal head and they removed it from his royal neck. And that was the rise of Oliver Cromwell and this whole moment that's created what we have today, which are constitutional monarchs. The Dutch Golden Age is something you definitely want to know about. Sorry, great comment from Kelly on the heels of slay. That's what these are. Louis XIV is definitely slaying, and I like your emoji. Great work. And Abby, as Abby said, Louis XIV is a mood. And when you go to Versailles, there's so much drama. Am I the drama? Yes, you are, Louis. It's all in, they were obsessed with mirrors. They had, hold on. Hang on, I gotta just redo this real quick. So again, I'm in this study guide pack that we have from Marco Learning on our website. There's our mood of Louis XIV and absolutism. There's a not mood that we don't want to claim the negative energy of before the exam on Charles I. And then we have the Dutch Golden Age. Remember, the Netherlands, which is a tiny little country up in the armpit of Europe, becomes very powerful through its shipping, through its joint stock companies, through what became known as its Protestant work ethic. And it established itself as a major trading power. In the history of Europe, you got to follow the merchants. The merchants have the money, the merchants have the business, they have the power, they have the connections. And in the Dutch Golden Age, it was a mercantile economy that helped establish, by the way, I'm coming to you live from New Jersey. New York was settled by the Dutch, New Amsterdam. And so that's a really important feature of this story is it's not just England, it's not just France, it's not just Spain, it's also the Dutch. And then finally, we have this word of mercantilism. So this is really the chapter of isms. We've got absolutism, we've got constitutionalism, and we have mercantilism. Mercantilism is an economic system where it's all about trade. You want to have a lot of trade, you want people to want stuff from you, so you have a favorable balance of trade, like people are buying my stuff more than I need to buy from them, and you control the high seas. Like this, look at this. This is a nice vacation. Pretty sunset, Venice or somewhere. This whole view of basically a world of ships in which armies and merchant ships rule the high seas and rule the world. That's why the defeat of the Spanish Armada in the late 16th century was such a big deal to lose all those ships, which were expensive to make and difficult to do. So Unit 3, absolutism, constitutionalism, mercantilism. Any questions on this? Let's see, New Jersey's in the house. Do I have any other, where are people joining from, by the way, tonight? Where do I have people come? I got people from Wake Forest, North Carolina, New Jersey. Go ahead and let them know. Let's see, Oliver Cromwell, great. And can you explain the things he did within the Palace of Versailles to maintain noble power? Briefly, Louis XIV in the Palace of Versailles did all sorts of things to make sure, in fact, just bringing the nobility into Versailles brought them under his control. If they're running their little country estates far away, maybe they could do their own little revolt and like do their own thing. If they're literally in-house and dependent on you, they become your minions. And let's just see real quick. I've got people from Los Angeles, Missouri, Texas, California, Canada, LOL, Pennsylvania, Kansas City. Any international people, let me know where you're joining from. For those of you who are on the Central and Mountain and Pacific time, there's still some more time to study. So I hope this review is useful for you. Let's get into Unit 4. Unit 4 is such a big deal in European history because the scientific revolution, the modern scientific revolution that's created our world happened in Europe. It happened in this period in the 17th century. And what it is the creation of a new way of knowing things. How do I know things? Well, if I'm a Protestant, I believe sola scriptura, the Bible is a way of knowing things. If I'm a medieval Catholic person or Council of Trent kind of Catholic person, I might say I know things because of what the church teaches me and because of Christian history. If I'm a scientist in the scientific revolution, I might be a Catholic or a Protestant, but I might also say, I know things because I can prove it with science. I can prove it with observation. I can prove it with the scientific method. I can prove it in a lab. I can see it in a telescope. And so we have people like Galileo who holds a telescope out and is like, wait a second. Between Galileo and Copernicus, we discover the movement of the stars. We realize that the Earth isn't the center of our solar system. The sun is the center. And we move from geocentrism to heliocentrism. We move to a different view of the stars. So we can approach the stars, we can approach medicine through science. And that's a really stunning change in human history. We take it for granted. And anyone who's Protestant or Catholic today has blended science into their view one way or another. But this was a big challenge in the 17th century. One interesting thing, a good category to know, a good ism, is neoclassicism, which is the revival of classical forms. So this building over here looks super Roman, is actually in France. It's right in the heart of Paris, because there's that return back to classical ideals, which aren't, classical ideals are Greek and Roman, which is before Christianity. And so it's pagan, non-Christian ideas and neoclassical architecture being revived. So that happens in the Renaissance, it happens in this period. Now, the Enlightenment, a lot of people get confused. What's the difference between the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment? And the basic way to think about this is this. The scientific revolution created lab reports in your AP chemistry class, actually created chemistry, modern chemistry as we know it. The Enlightenment created scientific thinking inside of politics and history and law and society. Maybe if we make a society and a constitution, we won't make it particularly religious. The United States Constitution never mentions God once. It's not a religious document. It protects the freedom of religion. That's just basically all it says. And the founding fathers of America were children of the Enlightenment. They believed that secular ways of thinking, scientific ways of thinking, logical ways of thinking could structure what we do. So we have people like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who developed the idea of the social contract, the idea that basically a king or a ruler has a contract with the people that he governs. And the people he governs have got to follow the law, otherwise they go to jail. And he has got to follow the law, otherwise they can chop off his head, like what happened to Charles I in 1648. So the Enlightenment creates a secular and civic approach to society writ large. It's like the scientific revolution applied across society. We get ideas like the enlightened absolutist monarchs who take their power, but instead of framing it in terms of God's gift to them, they embrace Enlightenment ideals. We have the Peace of Westphalia, which marks the end of religious war as we know it. And this leads to a secularization. Europe becomes the fastest secularizing place in the world. Today, there are countries like Denmark where the majority of people don't believe in God at all. And that's quite a big change from old Christian kind of Denmark. So the Enlightenment and its ideas end up creating the most secular societies on earth as we know them. Finally, we see things like the rise of agricultural revolution, which is new technologies, increasing crop yield, new coffee houses, coffee klatches, where people would debate and discuss things together. And there was just a lot of change in society as a result of new modes of scientific thinking and new modes of Enlightenment thinking. So great to see everyone. Let me know if you've got any questions here, everyone. We are in Unit 4. I'm halfway through. I'm doing good on time, I think, here to try to do the whole thing in about 35 minutes or so. So let's see. I've got some great some people taking a lot of these. Great. Scientific Revolution. Louis the 14th. Okay, can't argue with that. Do I speak French? Barely. This is my only AP this year, and I'm taking APUSH next year. Great to know, everyone. Let me know if you got questions or points of confusion about the scientific revolution and or the Enlightenment. Let me know whether this is helpful for you. Give me an emoji for how you're feeling right now, like nervous crying emoji, little starry eyes, little panda bear. And also, if you want to see my dog, give me a sheep emoji in the chat. This is Marco, my fluffy monster, and maybe I'll bring him in about 10 minutes or so. But you're gonna have to bear with me because I got to carry him in. He's like 30 pounds of dog and 130 pounds of fur. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions about Unit 4. Yeah, so Abram, the Enlightenment is defined here. Definitely check this out. The Enlightenment is like applying scientific and logical principles to society. And it's a real change away from traditional religion. So then we get the late 18th century, and this is a key turning point. I'm seeing a lot of sheeples and a lot of, let's see, shout out to Mr. Williamson. By the way, if you have an amazing teacher, just give them some love. They've been working hard. It's tough to do what we do. I teach at a school here in New Jersey, and the struggle is real, especially again with you all. I love y'all, Gen Z, but every time I'm trying to talk about AP European history, I get Riz in the chat, I get shape emojis, I get nonsense. And we had this on TikTok. I try to post a TikTok like, here's information that you can use, and it's y'all the worst. Okay, so late 18th century is a real turning point in European history because we kind of mark the end of the early modern period. I talked about the Middle Ages, 500 to 1500. We got 1500 to 1750. Let's take a look at 1750 to like 1900. And 1750 to 1900, we're seeing some big changes like the French Revolution, the American Revolution. And the American Revolution is kind of part of Euro because it was a European colony, right? I'm in New Jersey. I'm 5 minutes from where George Washington crossed the crappy old Delaware River to attack the British, who are these people, and declare and get independence for this country, which wasn't a British colony. So the French and Indian War and the 7 Years' War eventually lead to the American Revolution and the French Revolution, which upends this society. Romanticism is a new artistic movement rather than classical emphasis. Romantic music and romantic art emphasizes feeling and expression. If you've ever heard anything from somebody like Tchaikovsky or Beethoven, you get much deeper kind of feeling that can emerge than maybe some of the older stuff. Mozart was kind of on the line and bringing that feeling to life. Romantic movements emphasized individuality and expression. The French Revolution is super important, everyone. It's critical inflection point in the history of Europe, because it ends the absolutist monarchy of France. It ends Catholic supremacy in France in a fundamental way. And it is the first, it's like the Enlightenment in society come to life. And as it did, it caused a lot of dead bodies. The French Revolution is much bloodier than the American Revolution that many of us, a lot of people watching this are American. And, you know, there was definitely some battles and bloodshed, like the Battle of Trenton and Battle of Princeton, but nothing to the scope and extent of the French Revolution. The French Revolution is the first real attempt to make a secular France. There's a lot to get into with this, and I don't have time, but if you want to park yourself in a theme or a topic for a while, this is always a good topic for the AP Euro exam. It's really important. Then we get Napoleon Bonaparte. Now here, unlike Louis XIV, I mean, we have tights, but look at the little pilgrim shoes, right? Little bees that he put, petit abeille that he puts there. And he has his little Napoleonic hand and his little vest holding his belly. And he was like 5'1". So Napoleon is the guy who takes over France after the French Revolutionary War. He declares himself emperor. Crucially, he begins a project of expanding across Europe and scooping up parts of Spain and all these other parts of Europe. His whole project falls apart by 1815, but Napoleon is a really interesting contrast to, not just in fashion, but in terms of his ideology, from Louis XIV. So Louis XIV, grandiose power, Versailles, the absolutist monarch. Napoleon Bonaparte, grandiose, but emphasizing himself as an emperor of a new kind of France. And he allowed for religious tolerance. The Congress of Vienna marks the end of the Napoleonic era and the end of the radicalism that is part of the French Revolution. And this guy, Metternich, great. Look at, I mean, very high color. We're seeing things, lots of gold, lots of drama in Metternich. And the drama that he inflicted on Europe is known as the Congress of Vienna, in which we establish a post-Napoleonic era, and really sets up what we call a conservative ethos. Basically, it restores a balance of power in Europe and creates a temporary kind of peace. That is Unit 5. Okay, so you all had a funeral for Napoleon in your class, gladly, Ashley, amazing. So wonderful. I'm just taking a look at questions here. Okay, British. Oh, good. Thank you for correcting my pronunciation. British. Very well done. Okay. Great resources that the CED thing. Yeah, the CED is the super long version of this. This Marco Learning Study Guide pack, which we have on our website, is based on the course and exam description. The CED, the course and exam description, is like the sola scriptura of the AP Euro class. It's what you need to know. It's a contract between the College Board and teachers and students about what y'all are going to see on that exam tomorrow. Great. So, okay. Just looking real quick. I'm going to keep us moving along because people, I'm only halfway through. I got a lot to do. So this is Unit 5. Let's get to Unit 6. Unit 6 is all about another one of these transformations in this middle part of Europe between early modern and modern around 1750. And the big transformation is the Industrial Revolution. You don't get to the modern world without this, because up until 1750, the typical European person was an illiterate farmer. If you close your eyes and grabbed a random European person off the continent, you would find a farmer. But 50, 100 years later, that changes dramatically. People don't live in the countryside, they live in cities. People don't work on farms as much, they begin to work more in factories. People are interacting with each other in cities and having to negotiate city problems together. Things like sanitation, things like different religious denominations, things like children running around and working in these factories, and things like smog and pollution. All this happened really for the first time as a result of the Industrial Revolution. We have cities like Manchester, which become like densely packed with people, smog, factories, houses, and become a really important site of the Industrial Revolution as we know it. And in fact, I'm just going to shrink this down just a little bit, and that'll give us a slight zooming in. And I'm just checking on the chat here. Yeah, the picture of realism is literally us. Can I just take a moment? Shout out to AP students. And by shout out, I mean roast you all. Y'all are the most dramatic people in the world. I posted a TikTok about like, hey guys, like get some rest the night before the exam. And there was like literally all the comments were this much drama. So No. This realism is interesting because we enter into an era in which we start to see photographs in the 19th century. We end up in an era in which people begin to move away from neoclassical themes and some of the romantic kind of things into a more honest approach about life. The second industrial revolution is from this period. It's later. So the first industrial revolution is from around here, late 1700s to 1830s. And then 1870 to 1914 is the second one. And the question that Bill Naz has asked is, are we the drama? Yes, you are. Yes. Don't worry, I'll go to bed. Great. I'm just checking this out real quick. Yes, that's right. Getting the 5 in AP drama. So the second industrial revolution is the thing that makes modern cities. So if you go to New York City today, you go to London today, you see a 100-year-old building. It's a building that was built out of steel from the Bessemer process. You look at old railroad tracks and old pathways of moving people around on railroads. A lot of that was done in the second industrial revolution. We also get new things like the telegraph. Y'all are living in the era of ChatGPT, where artificial intelligence is totally transforming how we think and connect with information. The telegraph was the ChatGPT of the second industrial revolution, in which information can move quickly. So the second industrial revolution is the thing that makes modern cities, makes steel, makes railroads, and makes information begin to move around and sets us up for basically the world that the digital revolution of the last 40 years has changed. If you want to think about revolutions, first industrial revolution, as we said, was 1750 to 1830. The second industrial revolution, 1870 to 1914. The digital revolution is maybe 1990 to the present. The AI revolution is from November to 2022 until the present. So that's really important to keep that broader context. Okay, reactions and revolutions. People have reactions, and this guy started throwing rocks at people, right? There were reactions about, what about the rights of workers? What about me? I'm working in a factory 15 hours a day. My wife is working in a factory 15 hours a day. My 5 kids are working 15 hours a day. We're getting paid 1 penny a day. We eat 1 potato a day. What about my rights? And we begin to see workers agitate for themselves. And this leads to the rise of new ideas we're going to get to into the next section. So there were the failed revolutions of 1848, but demands for suffrage, demands for rights and privileges. And that's where we get people like, oh man, talk about, we saw Napoleon put the hand in almost in his armpit. Karl Marx did it too, except he did it with a beard and a half. It's beard and a half because the beard runs up the sides of his face. Karl Marx was somebody who said, look, the kind of capitalism that has emerged in industrialization is going to kill us all, and it will kill itself. And so he wrote the Communist Manifesto, which was how the workers can take control of the factories that are being used to suppress them. And that's the rise of the proletariat, the control of the means of production, Marxism as an idea and a response to this. So that is Unit 6, the Industrial Revolution and its effects. Let me know in the chat we're going to play a game real quick that's going to be super helpful for you. I want you to list in the chat every effect you can think of the Industrial Revolution, whether I said it or not. I said, what are the effects? List them all out. We're going to crowdsource this together. Marx, Slade. Karl Marx, Slay, partial Slay, AP, Slay. What is happening in this chat? What is all out of control? I need effects of the industrialization, not slays. No, Abby, no slays. I'm going to take a minute. I want people to post the effects of the industrial, so child labor, the rise of child labor, where kids might work on a farm kind of part-time, they're working full-time in factories. Urbanization, people move from the countryside to cities. The Bolshevik Revolution, ultimately the Russian Revolution as a result of this. Hygiene reforms, we need to get clean drinking water in cities. We need sanitation, we need fresh air in buildings, workers' rights, the 10-Hour Act, cholera, right? Diseases explode when water is stagnant, when people aren't separated from waste and sewage. You get AP Slay, good job. World War I, kind of Pollution, right? So smog and smoke and choking on the air, labor unions, women's rights. Women are entering the workforce, women are in cities. What kind of rights can they have apart from the men who have traditionally controlled them? So that begins to emerge. New ideologies, more cramped housing conditions. Workers' wages were low. Critiques of capitalism, bad tenements and conditions, the slaying of the czars. I like how you mentioned slay. Great work. Consumerism, right? Because the other thing is about when everyone's working and when goods get cheaper and cheaper, we do see the rise of the middle class, the rise of like being able to just buy stuff. Like I have a drinking glass here, right? Look at this beautiful thing. It's a couple bucks. I don't care. Where was it made? Nobody knows. This is only possible with the Industrial Revolution. If 400 years ago, oh, this chalice is worth $1,000. We have cheap goods and consumerism because of the Industrial Revolution. New wave of imperialism, and ultimately World War I. So great answers. I'm going to take you to Unit 7. Unit 7 is 19th century perspectives and developments. And nationalism is an important one. Nationalism as a word means almost an ideology around your nation. So if religion is about your church or your god or gods, nationalism is about your nation, and it reveres the state as a really powerful force. There are subsections of this, like Zionism, the movement to bring Jews back to Israel, or the unification ultimately of Italy under Garibaldi, or under in Germany under Bismarck. Another ism that you can know is Darwinism. Charles Darwin postulates in the middle of the 1800s that mankind does not, in fact, come strictly from a Genesis 1 and 2 interpretation of the Bible, but that fossil evidence and evidence of diversity and similarity in the natural world is proof that actually man and ape and other primates are descended from a common ancestor, that all life comes from a common ancestor before. And that's a very modern idea that's born only for the last 150, 170 years. Eventually, we get to World War I. So in World War I, we see nationalism rear its ugly head. Remember Franz Ferdinand? He's a guy, he and his wife are driving in Sarajevo, and the driver takes a wrong turn, and the Black Hand, which is a terrorist organization, ends up slaying him. So poor slay for Franz Ferdinand. And the slaying of Franz Ferdinand leads to the collapse of the alliance systems, and all the countries of Europe have to declare war. This is the worst kind of war ever invented, trench war. What's up there? It's called trench warfare. It's basically like, I'm going to dig a hole in this part of France, and you're going to dig a hole in that part of France, and then we're going to throw bombs at each other and see what happens. World War I lasts from 1914 to 1918. The Treaty of Versailles ends it in 1919. It devastates the French countryside. It kills millions of people. It unleashes the first planes in war, the first mustard gas in war. Franz Ferdinand is also a great band. Great, and I'm seeing a lot of interesting conversation in the chat. And if you like this video, go ahead and press that like button, subscribe to our channel. I'm going to keep us walking through all of this. Dada as an art movement is a kind of, what I want you to think about, everyone, is this. World War I shatters the idea of progress. So if we take something like, if you go in a time machine and you're back in 1912, you talk to some professor who's wearing a blazer, and he'll be like, we are reaching the pinnacle of mankind and his perfection. And then like 5 years later, he's like, it's all meaningless. World War I shattered these ideas of progress, of positivism, of a kind of making the world a better place. And so you get something like this, in which Marcel Duchamp takes a urinal, flips it upside down, signs it art mutt, and says, boom, that's art, right? What is art? Art is a joke. It's a scam. It's meaningless. What is meaning? Meaning is meaningless. What is language? Language is meaningless. It's basically like the attitude of this chat. It's Gen Z, right? It's very Dada. It's absurdist. It emphasizes, it laughs at what previous generations would consider serious, and it insults the received wisdom. And that's what we get. We also get a Russian Revolution here at the beginning. So World War I happens concurrent with the Russian Revolution, in which the Tsar, the king of Russia, is overthrown. And we have the first major communist superpower. Of course, the whole thing ends up collapsing in the end, but the Russian Revolution is a critical turning point, also very bloody. Two other isms are fascism, the worship of the state as a true kind of religion, and totalitarianism, the idea that basically the government can control all aspects of your life. And the poster boy of totalitarianism is Benito Mussolini in Italy. And this brings us to World War II, a devastating conflict from 1939 to 1945. The entire 20th century global conflicts kills about 100 million people. 100 million people die between World War I, World War II, and the wars of the 20th century. So when we think of like the wars of religion, right, back in olden times, here's St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre, 7,000 people die. Fast forward to World War II, you're looking at tens of millions of people dying. The technology is worse. The scale of extermination is worse. Okay, the last thing I want to share with you is contemporary thing. Let me just see real quick. Let's see. Great. I'm glad this is super helpful. Okay. Don't compare you to Dada. Okay. I've seen you on TikTok. Okay. Great. Heimler from Walmart. Thank you. What are the main causes of World War I? That's a great question. Let me just see real quick. Slay AP Euro. Let's see. Okay. So what I want to do is take you to contemporary Europe, and let me know if you've got any questions about this, to contemporary Europe, which is the modern Europe we know and love and hate. And one of the key features of this is the Cold War. Why is it a Cold War? Because it doesn't lead to bombs the way that World War I and World War II did, right? It's not as hot as those wars. The Cold War lasts from around 1945, 1948 to about 1990 and pits the communist countries of East Europe versus the non-communist countries of Western Europe. And so you see NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, being opposed to the Warsaw Pact, which is the Eastern European organization. You see, the Iron Curtain form between East and West. This image here on the left is from the Marshall Plan. It's basically when the United States in the late 1940s was like, we don't want countries to become communist, so we're going to throw money at them. And that is the kind of moment of the Cold War. It's the emergence of America as a superpower. Existentialism is when people really truly stop believing in anything and question the existence of all these things. Post-war nationalism, ethnic conflict, and atrocities. The Cold War ends around 1990, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of the Soviet Union, the fall of Czechoslovakia. It's just unbelievable how all these communist countries, like dominoes, fell, and we ended up with the end of this era. What we get instead is the rise of the European Union. So if you went to Europe in the 1990s, every country would have its own currency. You had pesetas in Spain, and you had francs in France, and you have Deutschmarks. Now you have the euro, a single currency, a single union. You can move freely within the European Union because Europe has made itself as a unified confederation of states a superpower in the world. So that's one of the final things. And then really, truly, Europe is not a little island unto itself. It's not it's not the superpower. It is a participant in a global era of smartphones and the internet. What is a typical person in France or Poland doing? They're on a smartphone, and they're on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all the other platforms that we're on, because globalization is kind of making us all the same. It emphasizes English as a lingua franca. It emphasizes devices, technology, Silicon Valley. We're all watching the same kinds of movies. We're participating in the same culture. We're wearing blue jeans. We're wearing or other color jeans. We're following trends globally online that have really transformed Europe. That, my friends, in about 45 minutes is the entire AP European History course in review. We're going to post this video to our channel. We're going to post this playlist. We're going to add this to our playlist of AP European videos. Remember, everyone, we got on our channel, Tom Ritchie going through every video, every unit of AP European history in detail. In fact, I'm going to take you all there right now. If you haven't seen this, this is going to be super helpful for you. So I'm going to take you to our channel, and you'll see here, I'll share my screen, right? The AP European History playlist, which has Unit 1, Unit 2, a DBQ walkthrough, Unit 3, Unit 4, Unit 5, Unit 6, 7, 8, 9. It also has individual lesson plans that we've done on the free response section, the long essay question, the DBQ, the contextualization point, writing essays, grading a DBQ, more than you could possibly use. So here's my word of encouragement to you all. It is late up on the East Coast. Go to bed, everyone. What are you doing here, right? And I'm seeing some little sheepy emojis, which means I should probably get this dog in here, right? So go ahead and take a minute, and I want you to post any kind of final words of advice. I'm going to be right back with this dog in this stream for you all. So just bear with me 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay, here he is, everyone. This is Marco to give you all a little blessing before you take your AP Euro exam. Say hi. He's tired and he's heavy. So everyone, best of luck on your AP Euro exam. Let me know how we can help you at Marco Learning. Definitely be in touch with us. We're on Instagram, TikTok, here on YouTube. We're going to post a recording of this. If you're watching the recording, post your questions in the chat. You guys are going to do great. Best of luck.